Hola a todos, hoy vamos a ver dónde se colocan los adjetivos en español. Today we are going to learn where adjectives are placed in Spanish. Now, I know that most of you are already familiar with the general rule that adjectives must follow the nouns that they describe. Yes, for the most part, of course, but there are some exceptions, right? However, the position that the adjective takes depends on the type of adjective. Indeed, and you'll see that shortly. But before we get to that, we also know that adjectives agree with the nouns they describe in terms of gender and number. Okay? So if we have an adjective that is masculine and singular, our adjective must be masculine and singular. For example, we can say el coche, which is singular and masculine, es amarillo. The car is yellow. So amarillo has to be masculine and it has to be singular, or it has to be put in the masculine singular, which it already is, amarillo, right? So, yeah. Now we're going to begin by looking at those adjectives that occur before the noun, okay? Possessive adjectives. These are adjectives that denote possession, of course. Mi, tu, su, nuestro or nuestra, vuestro or vuestra if we use vosotros, su for ustedes, ellos, ellas, right? These are not to be confused with possessive pronouns. Remember, pronouns replace nouns, right? Such as mio, tuyo, etc. Right? Those are not to be replaced. Those are nouns, but those are pronouns, but these are adjectives. All right? Mi casa está al lado de la iglesia. My house is next to the church. Okay, mi, which is the first person singular, that corresponds to the first person singular, yo. Tenemos que cuidar a nuestros padres. We have to take care of our parents. And when it comes to the possessive adjectives, nuestro and vuestro have to agree with the noun in terms of gender and number. You realize with the others, gender does not matter, but number would. So for example, mis libros, that would be plural, or sus instrumentos, right? So for the others, we need to factor in, or we need to apply the rules when it comes to pluralization. But gender would not matter. But for nuestro and vuestro, gender and number are important. Yes, so that's the first type of adjective that occurs before the noun, right? 2, demonstrative adjectives. These are adjectives that identify nouns, okay? So, este, esta, estos, estas, ese, esa, esos, esas, aquel, aquella, aquellos, aquellas. So as you see, we have the singular and plural form of the demonstrative, in addition to masculine and feminine forms, right? So aquel means like that over there. That's just another one, another demonstrative that we can utilize. And as you see, if this is the masculine, the singular masculine form, so if this goes before a noun that is singular and masculine, it changes. It changes to aquel. Muy bien. So, esta mujer es bonita. This woman is beautiful. Esta refers to the singular feminine, so mujer would be an appropriate noun. Estos coches me pertenecen. These cars belong to me. Estos being the plural of este. So for these, you have to make sure you pay attention to the form because they can change depending on the gender and the number that you want to utilize. So demonstratives, those would be the second type of adjective. 3, numerical adjectives. And as you see, this is somewhat broad. Muchos, dos, trescientos. So muchos meaning many, dos, two, and trescientos, 300. Now, when we say numerical, we're referring to everything. So that it includes indefinite ones, that includes ordinals, but one step at a time. Let's look at this one first. Hay 200 plazas en este país. There are 200 plazas in this country. And pay attention here. You realize that 200 has a S because plazas would be feminine. So when we're talking about the hundreds, it has to agree with the noun in terms of gender. So if we had a noun here that was feminine, we would say trescientas or trescientas casas, 300 houses. So you have to remember that, right? For most of the numbers, you wouldn't have to apply that. But when it comes to the hundreds, yes, you must make sure that it agrees with the noun. Marcos tiene mucho dinero. Marcus has a lot of money. So mucho in this case would be an example of an indefinite numerical adjective. Doesn't give us the specific amount, right? Other examples would be like poco or pocos, poca, pocas. When it comes to ordinals, we also have expressions like primera, segundo, segunda, etc. Those will obviously vary according to gender and number, right? For example, if I say, Carlos tercero, no, scrap that. I'm going to get to that after. So when we have ordinal numerical adjectives, we put those before the noun, of course, right? So el primer día, the first day. Soy el segundo hijo de María. I am the second child of well, I don't really like to translate names, but I'm just going to say Maria. I'm not going to translate it to Mary, right? But there's an exception here. If we're talking about a king or a pope, then the ordinal adjective goes after the name. So, for example, Carlos tercero, Charles the third. Right? As I said, numerical adjectives would also include ordinals and indefinite numerical adjectives. Another example of an indefinite numerical adjective would be algunos. Tengo algunas cosas que hacer. I have some things to do. So any adjective that gives us an amount, whether it is definite or indefinite, we use we put those before the noun in Spanish, right? Muy bien. 4, mejor or peor. So these are what we would call the superlative forms, right? Or yes. These are superlative adjectives. So mejor is a superlative of the adjective. We can say bueno, well, good, yes, mejor because good, better, best. So that would be superlative of bien, or you can say bueno, right? That would be superlative form of that. Whereas peor would be the superlative form of mal, mal or malo. Eres mi mejor amigo. You are my best friend. Luciano es el peor bailarín. Luciano is the worst dancer. So with those superlatives, we always put those before the noun in Spanish. 5, poetic effect. El frío invierno. The cold winter. La oscura noche. The dark night. Now with this usage, when I say poetic effect, this is a stylistic choice. By putting the adjective before the noun, we just place more emphasis on the quality. Because we can also say el invierno frío and the meaning will remain unchanged. La noche oscura. But by putting it before the noun, we are highlighting that particular quality. More so than if we were to put it at the end. And you will see this a lot in literary works. Muy bien. And this is a perfect segue into the 6th context in which we put the adjective before the noun. Subjective meanings. But sometimes, no, oh, I was about to say sometimes for some reason, but sometimes the meaning will change when we do this. So for adjectives of quality, if we put them before the noun, we can change the meaning right? Pobre is an example. We know pobre to mean poor, as in you don't have money. But if I put pobre before the noun, it actually means unfortunate. So un pobre hombre, an unfortunate man. Similarly, el gran hombre, the great man. If I place that after the adjective, it is actually grande, and it changes the meaning because now we're talking about size. Okay, so the big man. But if I put it before, it has to be gran, and it would mean great. Now you realize that the form has changed. With many of these adjectives that can be used before or after the noun, there's going to be a change in form. We see this with mal, we see this with buen. So some changes have to take place. But when we say subjective, we mean that this is more of an opinion, or is more relates to the emotions of the speaker, right? When we put it after, which we'll see shortly, we express a more objective meaning. But only certain adjectives this can only be applied to certain adjectives. This is not universal. As you see, the first 4 in this context, or in this area where we are talking about nouns that occur before about adjectives that occur before the noun. These 4 must precede the noun at all times. Whereas 5 and 6, there's some flexibility, but the meaning will be affected. Okay? Okay, so these are the contexts in which we use the adjectives before the noun. Now we're going to proceed to the context in which the adjectives are used after the noun. Okay, so we move on to adjectives that follow the noun. 1. Objective meanings. We just observe this in the subjective meanings. So when we put certain adjectives after the noun, we express an objective meaning. It's not our opinion, it is just as it is. It is just factual. A great example would be grande. If I say el hombre grande, the big man, that is not my opinion, that is just a fact, right? But if I say el gran hombre, the great man, that is more subjective, right? Same thing with pobre. Pobre after the noun means that the man has no money. Again, that is something that is objective. But if I say un pobre hombre, an unfortunate man, then that is kind of more, not kind of, that is more subjective. That is more based on how I feel or how the speaker feels. Okay? Muy bien. And I'm actually going to include a list of adjectives that change meaning according to the placement in Spanish. Okay, so you can look up for that in the description. 2. Nationality or origin. La mujer española, the Spanish woman. El niño inglés, the English boy. So anytime you want to use an adjective that denotes or represents nationality or origin, we put them after the noun. We can't say la española mujer. No. 3. Shape or form. Una mesa redonda, a round table. Una pantalla cuadrada, a square screen. So anytime we're talking about shapes or forms, we put that adjective after the noun. 4. State. Una puerta cerrada, a closed door. Un cuarto vacío, an empty room. So any adjective which describes a state, we put them after the noun. Okay. 5. Type. So this is like a classification. La vida profesional, professional life. Un asunto familiar, a family affair. So, ¿qué tipo de asunto? Un asunto familiar. ¿Qué tipo de vida? ¿Qué tipo de vida? Una vida profesional. So anytime we're talking about type, we put the adjective after the noun. And finally, color. El libro rojo, the red book. La pared azul, the blue wall. It would be very weird to say el rojo libro. That sounds so awkward, so strange, and so foreign. No. El libro rojo, la pared azul. So these are the adjectives that we must place after the noun. And you would realize that apart from the first adjective, all the others must go after. But for the objective ones, those can go before, but of course, a subjective meaning would be created when we do so. But for all the others, they must follow the noun. Muy bien. Eso es todo por hoy. Muchas gracias por escucharme. Espero que ustedes hayan entendido lo que hemos estudiado hoy. Nos vemos.